air with Ellie.
Hey.
And so well, tonight we're going to be talking about men predators. Um so basically, well, according to the Urban Dictionary .com, what we're going to be describing tonight is basically a man whore, and it's someone who repeatedly sleeps with random women indiscriminately, uh, without regard to any consequences. Um, so
Or feelings, right?
yeah, I mean, you see it a lot. I mean, a lot of people, will switch it to the other side and say, well, women are the same way, but who is worse, in this society that we live in. We hear, especially with what's going on politically with Trump, some of the comments that he makes. It's just, there's no basis for some of the comments that men make about women and their actions and what they do, and we've lost like a lot of common ground, I think, in the world that we live in. Where's all the gentlemen, really?
I don't know, because at my workplace, there's a lot of locker room talk. Like, a lot. Like, I have to learn to curb my reactions and, figure out how I'm going to respond. Because it's from guys that are nice to me, at work, but it's just, they don't think there's anything wrong with it. Yeah. And if you don't think there's anything wrong with that kind of talk, that is why the quote-unquote man whore in society isn't really looked at as a serious threat or a serious problem.
Is this do you think this is like a moral thing? Like, as far as this whole thing goes, is it different between people that believe in a scriptural kind of founding in like relationships, or because I've found that some beliefs that are twisted doctrinally, they think that it's okay for a man to just have more than one wife. Like when we speak about polygamists, I think that it's totally gotten out of hand, a lot of it in the Torah community, and
yes.
It's just it kind of doesn't even separate itself from like the world where you see a guy that so called as a player, and he wants to have many women. He can't stay with one. If you can't have one woman, what makes you think that you can have more than one? You can't make everyone happy. You can't make them all happy. Someone's going to get hurt in the equation. It's such a huge issue.
It is huge, and I'll tell you my personal opinion on it. I'm dead set against polygamy for myself personally as a doctrine. I think that it's wrong. I don't think any good comes from it. Surely the children suffer the most. I've really never heard of, there's all these people that come to me, especially, just people who are practicing polygamy themselves, and they see me object to it on their posts on social media, and they say, well, you don't have a Hebrew mindset. And I'm like, really? I don't have a Hebrew mindset.
Right.
So did it ever occur to you that maybe some of you picked up this doctrine from pagan nations? Like, did that ever occur to you? And then you relabeled it as something that was quote-unquote Hebrew, or, even scarier, people running around like using polygamy in conjunction with the word Torah. It's just, and then it goes into this whole disclaimer about, the 12 tribes, that we wouldn't have the 12 tribes. And, I can make a great argument for why polygamy is wrong. And the only people who don't like it are the people who don't want to listen to what I'm saying. They just don't want to hear it. It's not that my argument isn't sound, and it's from Scripture. I mean, the people who practiced it in Scripture, you look at Laban, and he lied.
Right.
He lied.
Right.
Abraham, he had the promise of Yahuwah. He had the promise of Yahuwah. And his wife didn't listen, and instead of being the scriptural authority and, comforting his wife and telling her it's going to be okay, we're just going to trust in Yahuwah's promise, no, he gave in to his wife and to her unbelief.
Well, a lot of people will say that, it was in the scriptures, that they had more than one wife, and but more or less, I think that Moses, he gave that. He gave divorce. You're not really supposed to divorce, but he allowed it. Moses gave those laws, right?
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example of how polygamy holds up. It's the same as divorce. It's not that Yahuwah is condoning divorce. It's like, it gets brought up and saying, since y'all are going to act crazy and you're going to lack self-control, this is what you need to do in the event that this occurs. But it's the last resort.
Yeah.
Not saying polygamy is a last resort, but saying it's a similar kind of doctrine. Like there was, divorce is in place because man sinned. And I think that's why polygamy's in place.
I think so too, but then you have to look at it as a whole. When we talk about like Adam and Eve, like the first marriage, so to speak, and he did things when the Most High, the Creator, created the universe. He did things like in a very specific manner. So, when he said he created man and woman, he said he would make a helper. He didn't say he would make helpers.
No.
So there's a distinction there. He actually took one rib and made that woman from Adam. So I don't know, it's just kind of a pattern.
And I noticed that, like, I read some of the extra biblical, books of scripture, and I enjoy some of them, and I think they're scriptural. But I noticed some of the people that endorse polygamy are, going into some of the Gnostic Gospels and some of the way out there kind of doctrines, stuff about Lilith and just weird stuff. And then there's just some of the fruit that comes out of polygamy. I was defending my position on why I didn't like polygamy on social media, and there was a gentleman, if I can call him that, he got mad at me because I said, and I was trying to bring up this question as a legitimate question about polygamy type marriages, is that, how does a man, he can't satisfy all these women in one night.
Right.
And I wasn't saying that to be crass. And the guy got on my post and he rebuked me for that and tried to say I was a slut. And
wow.
I mean, I'm just, trying to talk about women's feelings and just talk about the fact that a woman probably wouldn't be happy if her husband got to be with all these other women before her.
Yeah.
I mean, a marriage is about partnership. A marriage is about trust. A marriage is about, you know, when Adam and Eve were together, there wasn't worrying about other women, and polygamy didn't happen until somebody left. If you look at the scripture, it says they left the presence of Yahuwah.
Right.
And then it says Lamech had 2 wives. But
right. But you got to think about Lamech, all the things the ordeals that he went through. I mean, he was out there murdering, and you know, it was not what he was doing was not.
He wasn't Kodesh.
He bragged of his murderous deeds, you know, and it is just horrible. I mean, when people they talk about, you know, the scriptures, they involve polygamous relationships, and it just, the bottom line, it doesn't mean that Yahuwah approves of these things. You know, if we consider like the consequences that that came about revealed in scripture, like, you know, Abraham, it led to bitterness between, like you were saying, Sarah and her maid, and Hagar.
There was proof of that bitterness because she was abusive to Hagar, and Hagar was her maidservant.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And Hagar didn't ask for this. Sarah made her step up.
And then, if you remember Jacob, Rachel was jealous of Leah.
Yeah. And poor Leah, there is actually a part of scripture, and I always identified with this poor woman. It says, it like actually makes a note in the scripture that she felt unloved.
Right. Yeah. It does say that.
And when it talks about Hagar, you know, it shows how, like, Yahuwah, it says something in the scripture about, like, Yahuwah had compassion on her or something like that. You know, like, it's talking about how, like, Yahuwah looked upon her situation and thought, you know, she deserves something. You know, there was some sort of compassion or favor because of her predicament. It happened with both ladies. And they're in these tumultuous situations, you know?
Right.
And whether anybody admits it, everybody wants to be loved. They've done studies, scientific studies, about what happens to babies when they're not held.
Right.
And they're not loved. And that continues into adulthood. And that doesn't stop because somebody becomes an adult. Like, people, you know, want to have human interaction. Is it our priority? Maybe not, but like, it is for most people. Like, they want some sort of love and attention, and I think it comes out in all these unhealthy ways. You know,
it does. It just, I think it causes problems. Clearly, we see all throughout scriptures the problems that it caused. I mean, moving into the new covenant, I mean, we have references in I think 1 Timothy 3, somewhere in there, where Paul is talking to Timothy, and in Titus as well, and they told the leaders of the leaders of the assembly must be a husband of one wife, and a lot of people try to dispute that, and because they try to say, well, you know, that's for a leader, or a bishop, or pastor or something like that. But I'm like, you know, why would you try to explain away things, you know?
To me, they had to say it because people were lacking in self-control.
Yeah, and Paul even speaks about
direction.
The self-control. He even answered questions that the Corinthian assembly had about marriage. I think in one of those passages, I think he used a singular form of wife and husband throughout the passage. I mean, it's a general kind of feel in the New Covenant teachings and letters, and this is they weren't speaking about many or multiple wives, you know.
I know how I would feel if somebody was in a marriage and my understanding was that the marriage was only with me, and then all of a sudden that they wanted to have some sort of polygamous arrangement, and
right.
that under the impression that that was the doctrine that they came from, I would be devastated. I would be absolutely devastated if somebody misled me in that way.
Right. And then some women, I think they just kind of like compromise. They kind of like, you know, they don't want to make any waves, or they, you know, they probably want to keep their marriage, but, you know, a man, you know, kind of suggests this type of thing, and it's just it's bad all the way around. You can't be free to, you know, express your emotions.
Like, it's like, I mean, that would be a wake up moment for me if my spouse came to me and said something like that. Like, to me, that would be a moment of deviance. I'd be like, in my head, I would be thinking, we have arrived at the moment of deviance.
Right.
Somebody straight from the path of self-control.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's where I would be at in my head. Because I have had people try to invite me into a polygamous situation.
Yeah, I have too.
And it was close friends. It was really close friends. Or maybe they weren't, and maybe they were just hinting at that. I don't really know. You know, you can never really know what's going on inside people's heads. You can have an idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But the fact that people kind of like put those things out there, or they test the waters to see if somebody is, you know, amenable to this kind of thing, like, and I see it amongst unbelievers all the time. Like, I saw something in my news feed where a lady who's, I guess, like a political activist, somebody left a note for her on her car about being in a threesome.
Wow.
And yeah, and they just approached her. They said, "My wife and I think you look good." You know, it was, and she posted the note on Facebook, and I was just like, okay, you know, I expect this from non-believers.
Right.
And you know, like, and I felt appreciative that she was sharing her story in the sense that to make people aware that this kind of stuff didn't just happen in the 70s or in Lot's time, and that people are...
This is happening right now, today.
Yeah, and people are grossly inappropriate, and we do have to use examples because this is the stuff that's happening. You know, this is what's happening in daily life. This is what people are propagating, and we do have to find a way to deal with it with grace, but it certainly brings up a lot of issues, and I feel like this thing about the male predator is an issue, whether people think it is or not. A man's supposed to be a leader in a relationship.
Right.
And even if he's just your friend, he should be leading you in spiritual light, not in darkness. And he should be an inspiration to you to a future relationship that you're going to have, not trying to inspire women to catch feelings for him.
Right, right.
I just lose the respect for guys who do that. Like they're serial... I mean, there's women who do it too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know, there's plenty of women with a Jezebel spirit out there, or, you know, but on the topic of a male predator, I see it a lot. Like, there are people that come in the name of Yahushua, you know, in his precious name, and they misrepresent themselves as something that they are not.
Yeah, they do. It's kind of like a it's hidden. You know, you don't know what to expect from somebody like that.
Well, it's just so awful to bring somebody into a relationship and that's your feeling. Like, to me, I mean, you might as well go out in the world if you're going to act like that, but don't do it under the guise of the Torah and the law and the prophets, and carry the banner and let's hold up scripture and act like this is something righteous. That is sick.
I mean, I know that there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this and they're going to be like, well, you know, I don't agree with that, and you don't know what you're talking about, as far as, you know, that's concerned. Like, they're just going to be hardwired for the fact that, in the old covenant, they had multiple wives, and it was okay, it was fine. But, in the same breath, they're also missing the point. And it's hard to get people to see that, especially if that's their direction, that's.
Well, I think one thing that's influenced this whole atmosphere, like the whole planet, is just that the elites have really scripted every part of our lives. They've chipped away at the family unit. They've chipped away at, just how we treat each other. Like, I had a brother who had a post on social media, and he was talking about how his cousin said, "I love you, man." And it took him a second to respond, because he wasn't going to say "I love you." Wow. Because men are taught and conditioned to not show love, and they're taught that it's gay, or it's put in this really bad to show.
It's uncomfortable to show emotion, for a man to show his emotion.
Yeah, and they put it in this bad context that it's not manly, and everything's been twisted. Everything's been twisted, and relationships have been twisted, and relationships should be horizontal, not vertical. The only vertical relationship is with your creator.
I hear you. I think it's just along with the culture that we live in. I guess some things never die. It's a mindset that's just been there from antiquity, and it's just carried on. I think that there's going to be just certain types of people that either they're going to believe something or they're not, or they're going to be able to see the problem that ensues with these types of relationships, or they're not, and they're definitely problematic. Now, you'll on the other side, you'll have people that say that their polygamous relationship is fine, it's thriving, it's great, everything is wonderful. They have a system going, I guess. For so and for those people, I guess I don't know what to say about that.
I rarely get sarcastic, but when I said that that's great, I was being sarcastic.
It's a little sarcasm, nothing wrong with that.
Well, this topic is very sensitive, and sometimes laughing when you're just trying to figure out what motivates people, because you can't figure it out.
Yeah, that's a mystery in itself.
Oh, what did you say?
I said that's a mystery in itself. People are mysteries, enigmas, all of them.
I do find one scripture that really explains a lot of this misbehavior, and if we're talking just about a quote unquote male predator, or whoring, or whatever it is,
right.
And it's just that it's vanity. There's a scripture that says it's all vanity.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it.
It does. It does have a lot to do with it. People care a lot how they're perceived, and I think most people, if they're truly honest with themselves and they take inventory, they will admit that they care how they're perceived. It's kind of like what you do with your caring about that perception.
Right.
That becomes an issue, but a lot of people just don't hold themselves to a standard. Like what you were saying about Trump, saying some inappropriate things. I mean, he said a lot of inappropriate things about his daughter.
Yeah, that's another thing that's really really kind of crazy. Really kind of reflects the world that we're living in now.
It does. It does. It really does. I mean, how is it appropriate to the honor of your daughter to speak about her in a sexual manner in a public place?
It's definitely perverse.
Or ever.
It's definitely perverse. It's not normal. There's nothing normal about it. This is the perversion of this age, where people feel like they can just say anything, and they don't even have a conscience about it. It's like as if it's normal,
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people are definitely desensitized.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Definitely a lot of that going on.
But since we're living in the age where people would be kind of like lovers of themselves, just not wanting to love the truth. Their hearts are calloused, so we see the scriptures actually like coming alive, with prophecy.
Another problem that I see with this male predator thing and this, people coming in the guise of Torah, is that a lot of men are saying they're Torah observant, and they're telling these women out there that we don't need a marriage certificate in the sight of Yahuwah. And that is true. They're not lying when they say that. But the reason to get one, I'll never say it's scriptural to get one, but I will say it shows a certain amount of sense, because there's so many males who aren't being a leader, right. And then they're leading a woman into a sexual relationship and saying they're quote-unquote married, and they're abusive to the woman, or they don't live up to the promises that they made to the woman, or, they're not who they say they are, and they're supposed to be these spiritual leaders.
Right.
And they say, oh, we're legally married. And now this woman they've brought shame upon her name. Like, if you're supposed to be the leader, and you're going to lead her into a sexual relationship, and you're not going to give her a legal marriage license so that she has some sort of recourse when you've sullied her name, right. That means you cared about her name to begin with. That means you never cared about her.
I mean, going into the whole moral issue, it's like there's no heart there. The question is, are you getting into Torah, and then is that what attracts these men to Torah? Like, okay, wow, I'm in Torah. I can be Torah observant, and I can have more than one wife.
On the topic of polygamy specifically, I see the things that people say to justify polygamy, and it's like, they say things I've heard crazy things, like to get the household chores done, to help take care of the kids.
Right. Money issues, and everybody can be working, and I know women have a tendency to live longer than men, and they'll bring up that fact where, back in the older times, it was for the protection of the women, so that they would be protected.
That's what you're using a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen that get so much mileage in the Torah community, and then it becomes this perverted thing, and it's like, well, you can't do something generous for a woman without you saying I have to take her under my sexual wing. Come on.
Yeah,
be
right.
For real.
Or be fruitful and increase in number and multiply on the earth. That's another one. Which is, it's true, but when you're taking it out of context and you're saying, well, you're taking it for your own, like we were talking about, vanity, for your own, goodness, just for the heck of it. Hey, I'm gonna be fruitful and increase and multiply all over the earth, with multiple women.
That is just the depravity of that thought and to prey upon, some people call women the weaker sex. I had listened to a study, a few months back, proving that women were equal, that they just had a different role. Like that a man is supposed to be a leader, but that a woman had a different role, which is not to say a woman, can't do certain things. But bottom line is there's just a lot of depravity being perpetrated in order to get what someone wants. And in a case of maybe polygamy, the person maybe not saying what they want, and they're telling or giving these women this idea that they're committed to marriage, and they're not marriage-minded at all.
Right. It's like
they're not.
A false ground, I mean, I think that the way Yahuwah, I mean, he allowed, while he, allowed polygamy, I think that the scriptures present monogamy as the plan that, it most conforms closely to Yahuwah's ideal for marriage. I think that was his original intention, was for one man to be married to only one woman. I mean, even it's written. It says, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother and be united to his wife, not wives, and they will become one flesh, not fleshes." So, I mean, I think what it was speaking about in Genesis was that it was describing what marriage is, rather than how many people are involved. So it was more of a consistency there, and then it was used in a singular way. So, I think that's really the original plan, and it really just got out of hand. It really got out of hand.
Oh, sure. Well, I always tell people, murder is recorded in the Bible. Do you think that was his original plan? I mean, do you think he wanted Moses to murder somebody? Do you think he wanted David to murder?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
It's recorded in the Bible. Does that mean you approved of it?
Right. Exactly.
But,
you make a good point. That's a good point.
Not everybody thinks in those terms. They think it's recorded, and they try. And that's usually an unbeliever's perspective. They say everything that's recorded in the Bible. See what this Creator is like.
Right.
See what He's like, and they brandish that and like it's a banner, and yet they don't talk about what his original plan was.
Exactly.
Man rebelled against the plan.
I mean, it all started at the beginning. His plan was for them not to eat of the forbidden fruit. And what happened? So, can you say that, okay, it's okay for us to do certain, that, it all falls back on the original sin. Which is basically people making up in their own mind what's right and what's wrong, and why it's right and why it's wrong, or to make an excuse to say, well, it's okay, as long as we're married, or as long as we're. It's a lot of just confusion, as to, and it's misunderstandings.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot being taken out of context, and not put in the proper context, and people become prideful. They get boastful in themselves. They're like, I can put it in whatever, it's this is the context. But at the end of the day, given a conscience, you give us a conscience, a way to tell when we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And a way to know, and I've had people who had, many demons admit to me that, they say, oh, perhaps these feelings are rising up in me, because I am angry, or because these negative feelings are arising in me because I'm resisting you. Like, maybe not those exact words, but
as far as you
lines,
right. As far as you disagreeing with polygamy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
in regards to polygamy specifically, I'm trying to think if I've heard that. Not that specifically in regards to polygamy, but I've heard it when people were in sin and just said something similar to that toward me.
Wow. Yeah.
So I guess my point is that if somebody can admit that negative feelings are arising in them when the truth is shared about how things are supposed to be, just in general, that tells me where people are coming from. As far as polygamy, my personal experiences with people who put that specifically, I felt a spirit on them. That's just me. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people try and force it on me, and there was like a controlling spirit that went along with it. That seems to be an issue. The issue with polygamy is a controlling spirit, or
what about? Would you say it's kind of pushy, like people get
yeah. I mean, there was one person. This happened to me, and it kind of like an isolated incident, but this one guy, he was really pro polygamy, and at the time when I friended him on social media, I knew I was against polygamy, but I guess I hadn't really sat down there and thought fully, like, out in context what I thought about it in regards to Torah and everything, and I felt like there was some carryover from my Christian beliefs, and I just felt like it was wrong, but I hadn't really, at that time, I hadn't thought of it in that context. But the second the guy friended me, I felt a spirit attack me. I felt a demon attack me. And I got sick. I got a headache. The second I friended this man, and he was attempting to get us multiple wives, and the second I friended him, I experienced that. It was something pretty intense. And
wow, that's pretty heavy.
It was heavy. I mean, I don't want to go into a nebulous kind of thing too deep because, everybody has different beliefs about that, and mine are pretty strong, and I don't wish to force my beliefs upon anybody, but in the sense that it was definitely a real thing that I experienced, I would like to put that forth and share that because it was definitely real. It was definitely real, and I would say that in some instances it can be very pushy. I mean, it seems like that is pushed more than other things that are in the scripture that should be a priority. I mean, what about witnessing to people? What about so many other things? Like all the people that practice polygamy and push polygamy, I notice like witnessing isn't their priority. Like
right. They just kind of get stuck on it, and they try to I guess they're spreading polygamy instead of the scripture. I mean, that's a lot of men that I've met that are polygamists, they tend to fall right back into that, polygamy. What about polygamy? Let me talk to you about polygamy. Polygamy. And you're just like, wait a minute now. What are we talking about now? Are we, it's just something that that's like the second, that's like the second thing on their mind, and people will disagree, and they'll say, well, no, that's not true, but it's a very strong, it's something that just, if a lot of polygamists that I've talked to, it's something that you can't get around. Like, it's always coming up, and they're always going to make you to try to understand how scriptural it is and how real it is. But we're going to wrap it up a little bit because this is kind of getting long, to 6 issues that are problems that's wrong with polygamy, really. And I think one would be that it exploits the I think it exploits and commodifies men and women. Jacob was exploited and commodified. He was prostituted by his own wife and to his other wife, and Jacob became an object of gain. Number 2 would be polygamy. Is kind of like institutionalized adultery.
That's a good way to describe it.
And number 3 is that I think that polygamy kills intimacy between a husband and a wife. 4.
It definitely does. I would agree with that one. I mean, I'm not married, but I just know that would kill it for me.
I think it like creates this emotional pretzel, and it just like pushes a person into it has to be exhausting, at least if not excruciating. So number 4 would be polygamy spreads the husband or the wife too thin. I mean, can you imagine? Wow. Number 5, polygamy causes jealousy among husbands and wives.
That's the big thing, and if there's not more of a reason, it's just like human beings have enough problems with jealousy. They don't need anything added to that. They don't need any help to be jealous.
Right.
I mean, it's the most common form of sin is jealousy, and the fact that humans lack self-control and they don't practice personal and emotional self-control through the Ruach HaKodesh. Jealousy is one of the top reasons why it'll never work the way that it's not intended. It's
right.
not intended.
Right. And then finally, number 6, and I might have a bonus one. Polygamy, it just falls short of Yahuwah's design in marriage.
And to add to that, the children.
Yep.
The children were always, if you look at scripture, the children were always hurt. What happened when there was a battle? Leah and her kids were put out in front to die first.
Right.
Oh, come on.
No.
Come on. Cold. That's cold.
It is cold.
I can't think of anything that's more cold. I had so much compassion for that woman in scripture. I mean, she did plenty of things wrong, but in the sense that there were just some things in her life that she was alone in a lot of ways. That poor woman.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad overall. It's a very difficult lifestyle to those who are adjusted to it, and they're doing fine with it. I mean, maybe there's some people out there that have got it together like that. I don't condone it at all, because somebody's gonna come up short at some point. If it's not the children, then it's not. If it's not the children, it's going to be the wife. It's going to be a problem.
I can't relate to polygamy in one way, and with my last dying breath, I would say that polygamy is wrong in every single way, and I would not endorse it for anybody, although I can't speak for anybody and everybody, but I can certainly say I believe from a scriptural perspective 100% that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what Yehovah intended, and I don't think it's what he wanted.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's an example of true intimacy and love and concern for your neighbor. It doesn't promote those things, in my mind, and from what I've seen in Scripture. And hurting children, that is a huge thing. Hurting children. I mean, there are so many children in society who are parentless. And what are you going to do? I mean, like, I heard all these stories, like, when I was in this particular job, I had a coworker, and her dad had, like, a second secret family.
Wow.
It's like a secret polygamist.
Whoa. Wow.
And he wasn't a believer or anything, but he had a second secret family. And this is like an epidemic in some societies, I've heard. In American society, I've heard a lot of them doing this, where they had a family in a whole nother town.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So when they go away and their family thinks, they're out there earning money for them and striving for them, and the dad is doing this, and he's just out there with the other family.
He's with the second family. Wow.
Yeah, and it's on the sly, and I don't have the words. But the children are the ones who
suffer the most. Yeah.
Who get hurt, and who have to pick up the pieces and become whole and become something other than what they grew up with.
Right. Well, we'll have to definitely do like a part 2 to this.
For sure.
Definitely. So we're gonna sign off for now, and on men being predators, and we'll continue this next time.
For sure.